Oh yeah, we're in this thing. I got 3 steps in order for you to master your mind. Check this out. Number 1, you need to first identify and accept the fact that you are the cause for everything that ever happens in your life. I know it's easy to not take responsibility for it. You could blame anybody else, blame God, blame the elements, blame other people who did stuff to you. But bruh, trust me when I say we're going through all of these experiences because we choose to. And at any point, if there's something that you don't want to continue to experience, you can simply go away from it and attract other things. It is that simple when you change your mind. I'm sure you've heard the saying, if you change your mind, you can change your life. Bruh, it's just true. You can change your mind today that you're not going to do something anymore, and you best believe you're going to attract different situations based off of the fact that you're not doing the things that you were doing anymore because you're on a different frequency. Of course, all of this stuff is on frequency. So if you never identify that you're the cause and you are one of those kind of people who always try to externalize things, it's not going to get you very far. So of course, in spirituality, this is all about mastering your mind. So this is why people think it's so important to meditate. So anyways, basically it's you taking control of yourself. Anyway, continuing on, because I feel like that's just a preface to all the other stuff that I got to say. That's not even one of the 3 steps. Step number 1 is question your actions. Okay, so you need to question why you do the things that you do. It shouldn't be you just for example, something happens that you don't want to happen. You shouldn't just be like, dang, that sucks, and be one of those people who just get down about it or whatever. Of course, you could also be on the other end of it, and if something that you like happens, it could happen, and you shouldn't give anybody else more credit than you give yourself too. All of this stuff is stuff that you attract. So when it gets to the questioning your actions, if something happened that you wanted to happen, you should question why it happened for you, or how your process of thinking and the choices that you made led you to that point to where you got what you really wanted. On the other end of the spectrum, you should question why you took the actions that you took in order for you to get the situation that you didn't want to happen. Because everything is supposed to happen that happens. That's just how it is. It's supposed to happen. You got to figure out how you got yourself to that point. And when you start really taking ownership over the stuff that happens in your life, it'll change the way you think in a way in which you'll realize you got a lot more power than you think you do. You're a lot more powerful than you really would ever give yourself credit for otherwise. You got to recognize this because, of course, the whole point of doing all of this stuff that I be talking about in these videos is for you to truly become a god, aka get whatever you want out of this world. People, places, and things. All this stuff is to be had, it's to be experienced, it's to be manipulated and taken advantage of. But some people, for some odd reason, don't see this place as a place of people who are basically just warlocks and sorcerers and gods and fairies and genies and all that stuff who basically got magical abilities. For some reason, people forgot that we are those things. We are those people. We are those entities who have the ability to create things. So once you realize that you have the ability to create, it really unlocks so many more potential things for you to give yourself because you're granting it to yourself, okay? So you gotta know this, all right? So by questioning your actions, it should make it a lot easier to get into step 2, or not necessarily step 2, but thing number 2, because you need to do all of these, not in a particular order, just make sure you cover them all. But thing number 2 is making sure that you identify your strengths and your weaknesses. That was number 1, identify your strengths and your weaknesses. But you need to make sure, Number 2 is identify your strengths and your weaknesses. You do that by a couple different ways. You could either look at it astrologically, which I would recommend you look at your birth chart. If you've never heard of a natal chart, basically just type in natal chart, type in when you were born, and it'll tell you a lot of different things about like where the planets were aligned and what frequency you were on whenever you jumped into this portal, whatever portal you jumped in order to get to Earth, because we all entered through different portals. So based off of the road that you took to get here, it's going to determine your perspective on the world and how you look at things. So I don't really talk too much about astrology on this channel, but you best believe that I definitely think you should look into it. So for example, me, right, I'm a Taurus sun. So one of my strengths and or weaknesses is that I'm very, very stubborn, right? When I make up my mind about something, ain't nobody finna change my mind, ain't nobody finna take me out that path or what have you. When I was younger and underdeveloped, that definitely was a disadvantage, right? Because I didn't even want to do something like admit that I was wrong if I was wrong. So that was a weakness that I had to take care of. I was insecure in my own intelligence at the time. So if I was like, dang, I was proven wrong about something, I wouldn't even admit it. I would just try to like deflect it or anything but own up and just say, dang, I was wrong, my bad, or you right. It was so hard for me to do that, right? Nowadays, I'm very confident in the fact that I'm a genius. So I know that everybody don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. So knowing that, it's very easy for me to go, oh, okay, yeah, you got it. If that does happen, I'm very quick to give somebody credit for something, especially because it's a benefit to me whenever somebody exposes me to something that I didn't know or wasn't aware of. It's giving me more information. We all supposed to feed off of each other. It's supposed to be an exchange. So if all I'm worried about is accumulating knowledge for myself, but I'm never teaching, ain't no balance in that. If I'm always worried about being right and being afraid of being wrong, I'm not ever going to learn anything in the first place because I'm not even real enough for myself to acknowledge what I don't know. So, of course, all of this stuff is way deeper than just my Taurus sun sign, but that's just giving an example of me identifying one of my strengths / weaknesses that, of course, your weaknesses could be twisted into your strengths. So that's what I did. Nowadays, I got a strength in being so stubborn. So now I'm that person. I'll never quit. Whatever it is, I'm not going to quit on it if I really want that. So I've always been able to get what I wanted out of life. I kid you not. It's kind of strange, but really not. It's the normal because I'm willing to grant it to myself. So I tell myself, I want this. I set my mind on it. I look at 5 billion different ways I could get to it. And I accept the fact that the way that it comes is probably not going to be exactly how I expect it. But I do this thing where I look at everybody else and people who have achieved what I want to achieve. I look at how they did it, and then I dilute it or manipulate it in a way to where my perspective is on it, and in so many words, I morph it into the better approach, and of course adjust it along the way. The biggest problem with people getting what they want, or why people probably don't get what they want, is because they quit too early. They quit too soon. Of course, this is just my opinion, but you on this channel to hear what I think, right? So I really think that everybody could get what they want if, one, they were able to make up their mind. A lot of people have a hard time making up their mind. That ain't gonna get you very far when it comes to being a creator, because you can't create anything if you don't have any kind of inspiration. So you have to make up your mind what you want to do, what you want to create, what you do not want to do, and what you do not want to create, and stick to it. Stay stubborn, right? I knew for a fact I never wanted to get a job. Guess what? I never went and got another job, and I figured out how to be an entrepreneur and to make a living doing this. This is how it goes. You have to put yourself against the wall, and yes, this is number 3. Give yourself no choice but to get what you want. Give yourself no choice. It doesn't matter how hard it gets, how much crap people talk. It don't matter how difficult things get, all that stuff. Bro, all of that's rah-rah, because when you get to what you wanted to get to, you're going to prove yourself right. So you have to be completely convicted and completely convinced that you're going to prove yourself right. I guarantee you will. If you tell yourself you're going to have that, you can and you will if you stick with what you are, like what you on. You got to stick with what you're on. You can't get distracted in other people's opinions if people are questioning you. First of all, you don't owe nobody no answers, because nobody has it all figured out. Nobody. I ain't trying to hear that junk, bro. Everybody out here is really pretending to actually know what's going on here. Most of us don't even remember how we got here. So just keep that in mind. And just as a part of that, with the thing about people all giving their opinions and stuff, a lot of people are going to give their perspective because that's all that they have. But considering the fact that they probably don't have the same astrology as you, of course, nobody has the exact same. And even if you're twins, you don't have the exact same. And people are not going to be able to see the vision that you have in your mind's eye. So don't be surprised if people question what you're doing, the choices you make, the things you do and don't want to do. It doesn't matter what they think, because they can't do anything to you. These people can't send you to heaven. They can't send you to hell. They can't do anything but just talk. People just talk. And if they're talking about you, know that you can utilize that energy because they're feeding you. And we all need energy in order to keep flowing in this place. So use it to your advantage. Trigger people's emotions. If it triggers somebody else's emotions based off of what you're doing with your life and it really has nothing to do with them, it says a lot about them. That's probably not the kind of person who's going to get all that they want out of life, because they too distracted in you But you supposed to be internalizing all of your energy, spending it on yourself. Don't spend so much time seeing everything else that everybody else got going on and feeling some type of way about the choices that they make. Of course, analyze, see, especially if they're on the frequency that you're on, as far as if they're, like I said, if they've gotten to things that you want to get to, you make sure that you study them, but do not be emotionally involved whatsoever in the choices that other people make. It don't matter who it is. If your mother, your father, your siblings, your significant other, whatever, you need to make sure that you're sticking with you first. And that's also part of the reason why a lot of people can't seem to attract the right kind of significant other, is because they're too distracted in trying to attract the other person before you even master your own mind and figure out what you actually need, what you actually want. But that's another video for another time. But seriously, 3 steps. You're the cause. So number 1, question your actions. Because if something ain't the way that you want it to be, it's because you did it. Number 2, identify your strengths and your weaknesses. And it might be a little easier to do that if you study your astrology. Also, tipping off of that, if you got any fears, you need to make sure that you nip those in the bud. Question why you got those fears and make sure that you go head first into it to take advantage of that. Now, this is going to look different for everybody, but you need to make sure that you're identifying what you're afraid of and figure out why you might be. Because all this stuff normally goes back to our childhood and stuff. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid to lose. The way I look at it, the only way that you actually failed or lost is if you quit. If you never quit, you best believe you're going to succeed in whatever it is. That's just the way the universe works. The more energy you put into something, the more time you put into it, the more money you put into it, eventually, especially if you're convinced that you're not going to fail, it's going to come. I promise you. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And I always say that on this channel. It's not if you're going to get what you want. You will. It's when you'll get it, and the circumstances, how it comes. That's super important to know. Know that you have the power to do whatever you want to do and get what you want. All right?